prazer tê-los, a nossa audiência virtual, novamente, para esta discussão que nós temos tido sobre os filmes da Mostra XI. E é um prazer imenso para nós termos hoje o diretor do filme The Third Shore.
Olá.
Olá. I'm going to start again because I said everything in English, in Portuguese, I think, which I do sometimes. This is a pleasure for me to be here again and welcome our virtual audience, and in particular to welcome Fabian Remy, the director of this wonderful film, The Third Shore. It is one thing that I would like to say ahead of time. Please, those of you who are in the audience, prepare your questions. And we have Claudia Balby, who is going to be our mediator. And at the same time, do look into our website because there are quite a few things there that we would like you to take a look and check. So, but without anything else, I would like to introduce a little bit Fabian, which is really, for us, a pleasure to have with us. Fabian mounted dozens of shorts, series, and features, such as Rua Guaicurus from João Borges, Nimwan da Ju by Tânia Naya, and a series of, quite a few series, I think, but Hit Parade by Marcelo Caetano, and Inhotim Arte Presente by Pedro Urano, which was chosen as the best documentary series in the Great Prize of Brazilian Cinema last year, 2019. So Terceira Margem is one of his wonderful features, documentary, and he is here tonight to discuss that with us. I also would like to introduce you to Claudia Balby. Claudia was born and raised in São Paulo. Prior to relocating to Chicago in 2004, she was a professor at the University of São Paulo. And she works on technology industry, implementing solutions for academic libraries. Her connection to the partners date way back, Partners of the Americas, which is the organization through which we do our MOSTRA. And it dates back to receiving a grant for a research trip in Illinois when she was still completing her graduate studies in Brazil. She is currently a member of our Illinois chapter of Partners of the Americas, and she's on our board of directors. And welcome, Claudia, too. She's going to moderate the session.
All right, thanks. So I think we can start. You know, somebody, when we were preparing to moderate, you know, learning how to moderate the session, somebody gave me a very good tip, which was asking you guys on the audience your impressions, rather than asking you, do you have any questions? Asking what your impressions were of this wonderful film. So who would like to let us know what your impressions were?
Are you asking the audience?
Yes, I am.
Well, the impression of the film for me, for instance, I can start. was that it is a really fabulous movie, not only because of the photography, but the theme of the movie. And it is such a something that I associate myself with very much, but I'm not going to give it away because I think most people have seen it, or if they haven't seen it, Fabian is going to discuss some of these aspects. But it is really something to see what was happening at that time in our history when people started, you know, going towards the West, and what was done to, you know, to the indigenous people in the interior of Brazil. So for me, it's a marvelous film. It was enlightening, very much enlightening to me.
Thank you, Ariane. So anybody there in the audience would like to let us know what your impressions were from watching the film? If you have watched it already, that being. The people who are helping us are letting us know that there's a little bit of delay. So your answers, folks in the audience, may take a little bit reaching us, which is fine. We'll wait.
Or ask a question.
Well, I can do that. I watched the film, obviously, and I would like to know, Fabian, I got curious. How did you first come in contact with the story of João Cramura, the main character that's never there, but you know, almost like the main character of the film, as well as how did you meet Tinia, the present day character, and are you guys still in contact?
Okay. Well, first of all, thank you for the invitation to talk about the Third Shore. That's a long question because, you know, I spent almost more than 15 years to make the film. And so it started all with a friend of mine who had an aunt who lived in Luciara, which is a small city in the center of Mato Grosso. And she was the daughter of the founder of this town. And then she was a wonderful person. I mean, she told many stories, you know. And one of these stories was João Cramura's story. Mm-hmm. At the time, you know, I didn't really have a clear idea of what I really want to talk about, you know. And it wasn't even a film quest yet, you know. But then I started doing a lot of research in Rio, in the Museu do Índio. It's a wonderful place for, I mean, studying, and there's a lot of footage, you know, archives, audiovisual archives. Mm-hmm. And so I start understanding, first of all, the occupation of this region, which is it was a very unknown region in the heart of Brazil. And during the Second War, there was this concern about occupying this place, not to let people from abroad invade. You know, there was this fear, and then after a while, I get interested by João's story because it told a lot, I think, about this contact, you know, between Brazilian society and the indigenous people who were there. It wasn't a deserted place, you know. There was many tribes there, and there were many stories about not really conflicts. There were many conflicts as well, but also people from the northeast of Brazil who started living there, settlers, you know, and who kind of lived besides, for instance, the Carajá people in the Banana Island on the river Araguaia. And so I saw that that's interesting, you know, a story of mixing cultures. And then I started studying deeper the João stories. And at the time, I had a funding in France, you know, to do more research. And so I went there a third time, and I tried to meet João. And once I got there, I discovered that he died a few. It's in the film.
Yeah.
And so I say, wow, so I was really disappointed and sad. And I say, no, well, there's no more film, you know. I have to go back to Rio and forget everything. But after a while, you know, I still wanted to talk about that story. But I didn't want to make a movie like an archive movie, you know, with people talking about the past and showing archives, etc. And while I was doing research, I met Tinia. And before even thinking of making the film with him, we got friends, and we start talking about making a project together. And one day I say, well, Tinia, no, why don't we think about the story with João Cramura? Because somehow you have the kind of identical trajectory, as in English, but the opposite somehow, you know. And he said, wow, yeah, that's interesting. And I think the great thing about, documentary and life is that it took a lot of years to make the film, but I got lucky, I think, to wait such a long time, because at the time we were shooting, Tinia started thinking about going back to his tribe, you know. So he was very uncertain. He had a lot of doubts about that, you know, and I think it gave kind of a sense to the film. It gave it was meaningful to him, I think, to do this quest, you know, and for me as well. So that's it. We started doing research together, and we did it.
How and where did you meet Tinia?
Yeah, Tinia, he lived in Rio de Janeiro at the time, you know. He spent 30 years in the Brasilia, then in São Paulo, where he studied at the USP, University of São Paulo, and then he went to Rio. And he had a very interesting work. He did presentations in front of school kids, you know, in front of a general audience, and to kind of try to translate and to give more, to help people, non-indigenous people, to understand better the complexity and the beauty and the poetry and, very positive aspects of his culture, you know, which is wonderful. And when I met him, I had the chance to watch him, you know, do this presentation. So he's a very, but after a while, I think he kind of got tired. You know, he was missing his family and his tribe, and so he started thinking about going back. And during the process of the film, I really felt, and I think it's a shame he isn't here. I think he's I tried to contact him, but he's in the Orikuri ritual. But I think for him it was nice because he was thinking a lot about that, you know, about this the power of, the strengths of his culture, and I think the importance of going back to the tribe, to his birthplace, you know.
Fabian, thank you for the answer. And I'm gonna have to interrupt you now, because while you were talking, we got a ton of questions. So we have many questions to go through. So for your folks in the you guys in the audience, I'll be going through the questions in the order they were received. Okay. So let me scroll up, and the first question we got is from Barbara Block, who was, she wanted to us to know that she knew nothing about the migration to the West, but the themes of living in in two cultures is what resonated with her. So a little bit of what we were talking about before the live session started, right?
Yeah.
People like us also live between two cultures. We also have a comment from Tatiana Machado Griffin, who says, I thought the movie was very moving. I am so removed from indigenous culture, being from Sao Paulo, and yet it is such an important part of history. From Jesus Iniguez, Jesus felt that the documentary was a very insightful film, and the story is like no other that he had seen before. From so as I roll along, Fabian, please interrupt me at any point if you want to comment on the comments. Okay.
Yeah. Well, maybe about the identity. I mean, the fact of being between two cultures could be interesting. Sure. But I mean, as you prefer, you can.
Okay, so I'll go through the end of this list, and then we can go back to the business of living between two cultures.
Right.
So from Margaret Roter, she says, I thought the film was one of the most interesting so far. An unusual presentation inviting a person with a similar history to conduct the interviews. Yeah, Margaret. From Barbara Block, again, A Terceira Margem, why did you choose that name? Why did you choose that title? So maybe that's one we can return to as well. From Alice McLean, there was something poetic about it as well. From Jesus, again, are there other aspects of João's life that you would have liked to display or to speak about, something that you did not cover in the documentary, as well as what were the difficulties that you had? What did you learn the most from working with the tribe?
Okay.
And also from Jesus, what was the lesson or the concept you wanted the audience to learn from the film? And finally, back to Barbara, at the end of the film, Tinia goes on a 3-month trip. Did he stay? That's her question. But if we want to go in order, maybe, we can go up and start with the living between two cultures part.
Yeah.
Can I interject just a minute? I think for some people in the audience, I think most of the people have seen the movie, but for some of those who may not have seen it, give us a very quick gist of what is the movie about, so that people really get into it and understand who Tinia is and who, João is.
Are you asking me to?
Yes, of course.
Okay. Well, difficult. The movie is about, two characters, two persons who cross a cultural frontier. I don't know if it's the right word, but so Tinia came from the Funio tribe, which is a tribe that is in the northeast of Brazil, in the Pernambuco state. And with 15 years old, he went to Brasilia, and he well, as the movie tells it, he was 30 years living in the cities like Brasilia, São Paulo, and Rio. And João was kidnapped and raised by the Kayapó people in the heart of Mato Grosso state at a time where the government was starting projects, colonizing projects. And so he spent many years with the Bebengo Kre, because Kayapó is the name, is like not the real name, was non-indigenous people who gave them this name, but their name is, the name of the tribe is Mebengo Kre. And so he spent a few years there, and he was found by the Vilas Boas brothers, who were who started contacting and pacifying the tribes, so to kind of try to reunite them in the Xingu territory reservation, because well, at the time at least, they understood that if these tribes, isolated tribes or half isolated tribes, had contact with the settlers and the people, the non-indigenous people who were occupying this region, they would be, I mean, extincted because of disease and because of violence and other reasons. So they found three non-indigenous ladies in the tribe, and also João. And as João was quite young at the time, they kind of believed that he would be able to readapt to his original family at Luciara, which is the place, the small town where he was taken from. So in this film, Tinia travels with me in search of these stories, and he talks to people who knew João, and so this kind of these two stories that's mixed together, and at the end, I think Tinia is, I don't know if would say inspired by it, but I think there is some kind of reflection about this place in between two cultures, because I think, but I'm not sure, but when we leave one country, one culture to enter another culture, somehow we get in the third shore, you know. So that's if I may continue. That brings to the question of being between two cultures.
And also it ties in nicely to another question, which is, why did you choose that title, Terceira Margem?
Well, you know, I was born in France and my parents were French, but I was raised in Brazil, in Rio. So I had a kind of a very strong cultural formation from my parents, but also I went to Brazilian school, and so I had this kind of feeling of belonging to France and to Brazil. I at some point I studied in France, but I decided to come back to Brazil, and I'm living here since 2001. And I think that's why somehow I was sensible about this topic. But I mean, it's when I started doing research about the João story, I think I got contact with a history that I didn't know before. The indigenous culture. There's so many tribes in Brazil. There's so many different languages. So there was a wonderful, you know, mine of culture, and I think I got really inspired and seduced by this richness, and that's why I think I got interested in and made this movie as well. And the third shore, there is this conto, I don't know how to say this.
Short story
By Graciliano Ramos, which is
João Guimarães Rosa.
João Guimarães Rosa, sorry, which is a wonderful Brazilian writer. And I read it a very long time ago. And that's a very tough question, because everybody was saying, oh, but everybody's going to talk about the story. And I tried really hard to find another title, you know, but at the end, I mean, I said, well, the third shore. And I think it got a different meaning from the short story, because I think, as far as I remember, the story was about a father who went away, who took a canoe and went in the river, and was kind of absent father, and metaphorical story about, I don't know, death, maybe. And so the third shore in this case is more about, you know, this place where you belonging, this belonging to a place which is not really anchored in one culture specifically. And I think it's very contemporary, maybe it's a very contemporary feeling, because as maybe you know, you are in another country and you learn to the language and the culture, and you get, you know, inspired by it. So I think people can really relate to this feeling, I guess.
Yeah, I know I did, and I know at least Barbara did from her question.
Yeah, and you know, so just to, at the time I read a very important text about Eduardo Viveiros de Castro, which was a Brazilian thinker, and he kind of showed how the indigenous culture was always moving. It's not a fixed entity, you know. It's always changing, adapting, and this shows how powerful this culture is, because after 500 years, more than 500 years, they're still here, you know, resisting and preserving their culture and their territories. And I think there's a lot of, it's interesting to think about that, you know, as well. What does it mean to be indigenous? I'm not in the right place to answer to that, you know, but I think there's something there that is important today, because people used to say, oh, you know, if this indigenous guy have a cell phone, he's not indigenous anymore. No, you know, it's wrong. I mean, they have their culture is evolving, and it's so complex. So I guess the third shore somehow is this place which is not really defined, you know, but that still is rich. And in the case of Tinian, nowadays he lives in his village. He's very happy. I mean, he's perfectly readapted, and that's it.
And I think you also just answered another one of Barbara's questions. She was asking, at the end of the movie, he left on a trip. Did he stay? I think she was referring to Tinia, and I think you confirmed that Tinia now lives in the tribe. He did stay in the tribe, right?
Yeah, at the end of the movie, he was like, sure, you know, was convinced that he had made a good choice, and he really wanted to go to his, and right after the shooting, he went back to his tribe, and he's still there, you know. And we I think someone asked if we have contact. We still have contact quite often, and he's now working with healthcare, you know. He did studies about plants, medicine, and he's now working in his tribe. He has a little son. That's it.
Nice. So we still have many questions to answer. These came from Jesus Iniguez. Was there another aspect of Tinia's life that you wanted to have covered, or João's life for that matter, you wanted to have covered in the film and you did not?
Well, you know, there is some, I mean, some people in Luciara, which is the place where he lived, know his story. It's a very old story, and there's some, I mean, Orlando Vilas Boas one of the Villas-Boas brothers, wrote about this story as well. But it's curious because it's kind of, sometimes it's quite difficult to know the exact dates, you know, and more details about his story. So not really, you know, I think it's, I really talked about, not talked about, but I think the film went to the point that was interesting in his trajectory from this identity perspective.
Jesus also wanted to know what kind of difficulties that you had making the film.
Making the film during the production,
I guess.
Okay. Well, I mean, it was a really wonderful experience. You know, we had a small crew and everything went fine. We had a funding from Brazilian government at the time. It was more wishful to help artists. And there was one question we really wanted to deal with properly, was because when you want to shoot film in the Xingu reservation, you have to have the authorizations, you know, from FUNAI, which is the government institution that regulates this kind of matters. So it was difficult because there was a lot of bureaucracy, and it took a while to get to the right persons. And almost before, a few days before the shooting, we still didn't have the authorization. And we had all planned and everybody ready to go to the shooting. And that was hard, you know. And it's interesting because when we first met the Mbembengo Kre, Kayapo leaders like Bejai, they were very suspicious. How do you say desconfiados? I don't know.
Suspicious.
Suspicious, yeah.
Suspicious, yeah.
But for good reasons, you know, because there are so many people doing, I mean, shooting there, writing articles, writing university thesis, you say, yeah. So it took a while as well to reassure them, to explain exactly what we were wanting to do, you know. And that was interesting as well. It was a kind of difficulty, but it was nice. It felt natural because this was the whole process of, you know, getting closer to them. And it was wonderful because after a while they kind of opened they wanted to show us things, and they invited us to meet Haoni in his village, you know. At the end, we felt that they were really glad to kind of go back to João's past and memory. So that was a kind of difficulty. But apart from that, you know, it was really just wonderful experience. And I think it would be nice to have a Tinya point of view. But again, I mean, as far as I know, it was important to him as well. You know, it was meaningful.
Right. And for our American audience, Fabian just mentioned that they got to meet Haoni. Haoni is a chief and an activist, perhaps the most famous and strong figure, and has been like that for about 2 decades, going on to 3 decades in Brazil. So the fact that they were taken to meet that person is really significant. It's a sign of the trust they were able to win from the people they wanted to film. Great. Also a question from Jesus. What did you learn the most? And like complementary, what did you want the audience to learn the most from the film?
Well, you know, I think the learning started a long time before the film. You know, I think this long process of doing research and meeting and being with Tinia and um, I mean the film was only the kind of uh, the one part of this process of learning, I think. Uh, and yeah, I think, you know, I learned so many things about indigenous and how terrible the past, how terrible it was to the indigenous people in Brazil since the colonization period. I mean, there was I don't know, maybe 90% of the population was extincted. It's enormous. It's unbelievable, you know, and how this diversity survived, and how important it is to have a preserved territory so that they can keep their traditions. And I mean, there's a whole kind of aggressive, not propaganda, but you know, the government nowadays is kind of questioning their relation to nature, meaning that they want to be like any Brazilian. Of course, there are some of them they want to, and they can. I mean, it's very complex, but you know, this very important for me to understand how important how intertwined nature and these people are. You know, I mean, you can't really distinguish them. They are nature. I mean, they are being nature. They are, um, and I mean, I can only see it from outside, you know. But I think it would be nice if uh, because there's so much misunderstanding about their culture, about the meaning of it, and it's a shame because we see today they're talking about, you know, mining like in the Yanomami territory, and it's really a shame. And when you see a wonderful book that Davi Kopenawa, which is a leader of the Yanomami people, he wrote like a wonderful book about telling his so many aspects of his culture, and how it's important to see nowadays that they kind of they are seeing what's going on as about the climate change. You know, we are starting maybe to talk about that now, and when you get close to the indigenous people, you see how they are. I see they're understanding what's going on. You know, I mean, there's could be so many things to say, but I think that's the main.
So again, for our American audience, I'm just going to throw in some facts here, so to help you get more information about the whole issue, right? This reservation, it's a national park. It's called Parque Nacional do Xingu. It was only formed in 1961. So it was only in 1961 that these indigenous populations got their land, you know, fully entitled and officially recognized as having a right to that land. And we are talking about 27,000 square kilometers, which translates to 10,000 and a half square miles. So we're talking about a huge extension, territorial extension, which has been contested from the very beginning, and it's being even more contested by the current far-right government, which does not believe in preserving land for the indigenous people, and wants, you know, if you watched the movie, there are signs of what's encroaching on these populations. You see silos. That's silos for soybeans. You see at the entrance of some small city that they visit, there's a sign that says Capital do Boi Gordo. That's the capital of cattle. So soybeans, cattle, and more recently, mining is what the current government would like to see happening in that land. It's a highly, it's a totally hot topic in Brazil right now, and those populations are under risk of losing their land under this current government. The work that the Vilas Boas brothers did was also very helpful for air traffic. Their pioneer work, which was very protective of the Indian populations, the native populations, don't get me wrong. But it was also at the service of the government, and it is due to their work over decades that Brazil now has 4 military bases in that land, which are like the backbone of air traffic control over that very important area for both domestic air traffic as well as transcontinental air traffic. So, it's not only about the agricultural expansion, but also about national security interests. I think there's another question from Jesus Fabian. You told us what you learned, but he was also asking, what did you want the audience to learn from the film?
Well, it's so hard to to make a film, and I mean, we kind of discover during the process, during the editing, we are still learning what is the movie is about. I see. So I didn't have a very clear idea of a message, but at least I and the editor and Tinya, we had some idea about this, really trying to convey, to translate what it is to be between two worlds, and what try to help understanding this feeling and what it can mean about sometimes pain and and confusion. I don't know. It's hard to say actually. Really a clear message. But I think at the end, it's we had when I started editing, I thought about a very complex narration and putting some more intellectual thoughts about all this. And at the end, the more clear the narration was, the better it was to let the film talk from himself. And I think at the end, it's for me, at least, I feel that it shows the force, the power of this culture, because João could, I mean, he went back to his original family, but he didn't want to stay there. He preferred to go back to the Mbengokre, as well as Tinya. At the end, he decides to go back to his tribe. So there's something there, that we have to think about that. If we had the chance, for instance, to live, I don't know, 1-2 years in a tribe and to really have access to this tradition and to the feeling of being in nature, to live very simply. I mean, I had the occasion in another situation to spend a long time in the tribe, and maybe we would question a lot of things in our cities, in our culture. So I think maybe the film talks a bit about that, how strong that is and how fragile as well. We cannot say, oh, they are so I mean, they can disappear. They do. I mean, so many things have been lost. So it's a balance between, you know, resistance and fragility as well.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. We also had a question from Tatiana, and she was asking, what are ways that we could be more inclusive of indigenous culture being in a big city as we are? How can we advocate for those stories to continue to be told and honored?
Well, I don't know. It's a very interesting question. I don't know the United States, but well, there's many indigenous people there, and in Brazil, I think that one of the very important things is the media, the mainstream media doesn't really go deep into this, you know, these cultures. It's always very superficial. And so I think it would be important to have one of the things that could be done. I mean, is to really go deeper in content of what people are showing in the mainstream media. I think as well, you know, it's very hard to know how can you understand indigenous traditions and if people in the cities have no contact with nature. I mean, I think one thing is linked to the other, and so maybe I don't know how could we encourage kids to have contact with nature more often, and maybe in a different way, you know. That doesn't mean that you have to do like ecotourism, you know, and go bring like buses into the tribe, you know, in the villages. That's not good. But it starts, I mean, I think it starts with information, you know, good information, complexity, to accept complexity and not to put a mask and to put a name on something. You know, I think there's more than 160 languages, different languages in Brazil. That's incredible. It's so rich, you know. There's so many little countries and communities inside Brazil territory. So it's a very complex question, but I think, you know, little by little, it's to help people at the school to understand better. I have two daughters, and one of them was studying about indigenous culture, you know, and it was interesting. I was very happy to see how this complexity was brought to her, you know. So I think, yeah, that's another possibility, you know, to help at school people to understand, to bring maybe more people like Tinia to talk about, you know. And it's so amazing. Kids are just like mesmerized, like hypnotized by when he starts talking about his culture, because it's so beautiful, so poetic, you know. It's a way of seeing the world. It's so rich. It's a shame to lose that, you know. And people from the cities can relate to that so easily, you know. I think.
Fabian, I'm gonna ask a question of my own, which has to do with these attacks on this culture. I feel like, you know, the native people, like, there's no mercy, because in the beginning it was the Catholic Church, right? That's how Brazil was started, right?
Yeah.
All the Jesuits and the effort of converting those populations.
Yeah.
And now it's the evangelical churches. At some point in the film, there's some Christian ceremony, which I think, I'm not sure, but it looked like some evangelical ceremony. So I wanted to ask you, what did you find when you were filming of that influence in those populations?
Well, no, it's the evangelical church is really enrooted. I don't know if it's the right word in Brazil nowadays, and it's growing because they have a lot of media and sometimes and somehow also they're good churches, evangelical churches.
Of course,
we cannot be like so radical.
of course,
but they are at a lot of levels. I think they're filling a gap, from the government, from institutions. Because they are present, they are sometimes giving assistance where you don't have assistance. So it's a very complex issue. But in the Kayapu, in the Xingu as a whole, I can't really say, But with the Mbengokre, with the Kayapu people, they're not really present. They're not getting into, because the Kayapu people are very strong. I mean, very clear, very how to say. Eles têm muita clareza of the importance of their culture. They're proud of their culture.
They have it very clear about the importance of their culture.
Yes, I mean. But I had an experience with the Guajajara in Maranhão state. I spent 1 month there with a German director. Was following the guardians of the forest, which are that threaten. I mean, they're really doing a dangerous and incredible work to try to protect their land, against illegal loggers and cattle raisers and ranchers. And there was different. There were many evangelics that were already converting some of the guys in the tribe, and it's complex because there's such a community sense, community spirit, and if someone is in this community turns into another tradition, he's still a member of the community. So it's a very perverse, and very aggressive. They like when with vans before Christmas to give little gifts to the kids, and who believes in God? Raise your hand, it was. And so, there was kind of irony. I was talking with the chief there, Kasiki. He said, well, let them, believe that they're converting, but they will go away, But at the same time, little by little, it's not so good. So and with this government in particular, in Funai at one point, I'm not sure he's still there, but the one of the directors of Funai was an evangelical guy, and he thought, oh, let's do contact, let's bring missionaries to the uncontacted indigenous people who are in I don't remember where exactly, but that's horrible. I mean, it's unbelievable that the Funai guy from Funai can say that loudly, in the press, and so nowadays, it's really hard because they are occupying like strategical places in the government, in the institutions, and I think Bolsonaro has a very clear. I mean, some people say he's dumb, but he has a very clear idea of what he wants. He wants to open the Amazon, forest. He wants to mine it. He wants to let people mine the indigenous territories. And he's very perverse because, for instance, there were these big fires in 2019 and this year as well. I mean, deforestation is rising very strongly, and he was questioning, for instance, Raoni authority publicly. So he called a girl from tribe from the Xingu who was saying, no, now we have to talk about the indigenous people from the 21st century. Okay, but what does it mean? It's so superficial, but it's so perverse because it starts dividing people and creating the illusion that the indigenous people will suddenly have access to all material goods, from our society, and that they will earn money with mining. It's not true. It's not true.
Oh.
We see here in Minas Gerais, the state where I live, there were 2 dam break-ins that killed so many people,
Yes.
you know, and they're there, they're still mining, nothing changed. The communities that are living just beside these mining complexes, they're not having almost benefit. Many people work there. That's the problem, because somehow the money comes from this mining activity, of course.
Right.
But you know, all the money goes away. Where? I don't know. China, I don't know. You know, not in Brazil. So it will be the same in the indigenous territory. It's really. I mean, I'm really revolting. Is a word.
Yeah.
It's a shame.
And it's not a new story anyway. We know what happened in Carajás, Serra Pelada, in the state of Pará in the 1980s.
Exactly.
It wasn't a good outcome, and it didn't lift people out of poverty. That's it's kind of by design. We have some other questions here. Michelle wanted us to know that we have many indigenous languages in the United States, but depending on the state and its funding, the churches and assimilation, the dominant languages are, and Michelle, please excuse if I mispronounce them, Cree, Seminole, Cherokee, Creek, Lakota, Chippewa, Sioux, Navajo, and Apache.
Wonderful.
Jesus is asking if you have any other films about indigenous culture, which we can purchase or view.
Oh, there are a few. You know, there's a director, Vincent Carelli. He created, I think it's an NGO called Vídeo nas Aldeias. So he helps, encourages indigenous from many tribes to make their own films. And he directed a very important film called I forgot now. It's about the Guarani. There's a conflict about lands, and so I've tried to remember before ending. So that's a good director to follow. You know, he's linked to many projects of films about indigenous culture. There is all the names are getting out of my mind now, but Andrea Tonacci documentary about a similar story of a kid who went out of his tribe and was found by Brazilian indigenous, Serra da Desordem. It's an amazing film, really nice film. There is As Hipermulheres from I think it's linked to Vídeo nas Aldeias as well, this film. I mean, I can, after the session, I can send to you maybe a list of films.
I'm actually, I'm putting everything in the chat as you were talking, all those names and titles. And I asked Lua to transmit them to our audience.
Okay. Wonderful.
I would like to also say something. You know, there are so many indigenous languages in Brazil, and which particular one is the one that the Carajás have, and which one we hear in the film?
Well, Carajás is a tribe from the Araguaia River. They are different from the Mebengo Cré, the Kayapó. Carajá is a G linguistic, I don't know how to say in English, but it's different from Kayapó. Kayapó, I don't know the exact term, but Kayapó is the Kayapó language.
Kayapó is the language called Kayapó too?
Yeah. You know now, I'm not really sure, but I think yes. Okay. For instance, the Tinya language is a different language, and I think it's the last language from the Northeast tribes. You know, many of them lost their language. So the Funio language, which has a specific name, but I don't remember exactly. And they are, I mean, they're one of the sole tribes in Northeast that still have their language. And it's amazing, you know, there's like words for mother, it's the beginning of my seeing. Father, it's the beginning of walking. House is the place to be happy. And so it's really, really amazing.
I have another question. João's name in two of the interviews that I was reading, and when I was reading about you, in one place they call him João da Luz, and another place João Kramura. Is João Kramura his Indian name?
Yeah.
And is it Kramura? Does that mean da Luz?
No.
Okay. I was wondering if it was related.
Because da Luz, the founder of Luciara, which is Lúcio da Luz, it was a very big family of settlers that occupied a few places along the Araguaia River. You know?
Okay.
They are from the Northeast as well.
Okay.
So João da Luz is his Christian name, and Kramura is the
Indian, Kayapa name. Okay.
I was very moved by the moment at the end of the film where you, Fabian, finally say, "This is where I'm seeing João for the first time," because he's not in the documentaries that the Vilas Boas brothers filmed, not in that footage. And then you finally get his ID, right?
Yeah.
And you are seeing for the first time. And I think, if I saw it right, João died illiterate. Because, you know, in his ID card, in the place where you would sign the ID card, I could see like the end of something that says, I don't know, analphabet, I'm not sure. Was that the case?
That's the case, yeah, of course.
Yeah.
You know, it was interesting as well to think about the meaning of archive footage, because the archives, you see, it was so difficult to find the original 16 millimeters film, and we didn't find it. I mean, I searched, so many places. It was one of the sons of Orlando who had a DVD, you know, and he said, "Oh, I gave the film to the Cinemateca Brasileira, but didn't find there." So we used a kind of, you know, not so good copy of the 16 millimeters film, and you know, when you think of it, I mean, it was when they shoot when they film, the shoot is an interesting word as well to that, because the first images is a kind of before they die, because it's the first contact and it's the time when they get the diseases, you know. And I think the Vilas Boas brothers were criticized about that. I mean, they have an important role, because we don't know what would have happened if they didn't contact these tribes. But anyway, many people died after the contact. So it's crazy to see how these images is the last image of so many people who died just after, right? And Megaron, who is the right hand of, is the sobrinho of Raoni, nephew, Raoni's nephew. He says that in the film. He says, "Oh, after that, many people died. All these people you see in the film, they died, many kids, you know. And I had to flee with my father. We ran away to another place, so to survive." So you know, so it's so delicate to use this kind of images as well. You know, you have to be very careful how to use images, because, and in the Kayapa tradition, you don't keep the belongings of the dead. You know, you bury everything with. So we are kind of doing something forbidden as well, showing these images and keeping the João Kramura's ID, you know. So it was moving as well because of that, you know, to have access to his picture, because we were thinking, oh, we will never see his picture, but yeah, there he was.
Wow, yeah. So Michelle also wanted to let us know that when she listed the tribes here, she forgot the Chickasaw tribe, which is very dominant in the US, and her great-great-grandmother is a Chickasaw.
Mhm.
Nice. Wonderful.
That's interesting too. Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to know if there is any movement to bring some. We talked about this yesterday when we discussed with Christine, the director of Amazonia, o Despertar da Florestânia, the Awakening of Florestânia. And what is, are people doing anything to bring these films to schools? Because we have to educate the young people about this part of our history. This is Brazil too. And I think we need to bring that to schools. Is there any effort being made in that, in that sense?
Well, nowadays in Brazil, I think this kind of effort from a federal perspective, I think absolutely
Not gonna happen.
Or not, yeah.
Not gonna happen, yeah.
Mm.
From the, I mean, municipalities and states, I mean, they are even changing, I think, the books that are going to be sent to school in the next generations. So how is this issue going to be approached, right? I don't know. To tell you the truth, I'm not aware of projects of showing this kind of films in the schools. Here in Minas Gerais, for instance, the Federal University is very open to indigenous people. They have few students there, and they do a lot of meetings, with indigenous leaders from all around Brazil. And they have a very nice festival, which is called Foreign Doc, which is very focused on this kind of on these issues, so there are always many films being presented about indigenous and from indigenous people as well. But I couldn't tell really, because I think every state is different. Every municipality maybe deals with it differently. I know in Rio, for instance, Tinia worked in many private and public schools quite often. But after a while, he didn't do that anymore. He wasn't invited, so I don't know what happened.
Another thing that has been on my mind since I was reading some of the things that this film won the Taiwan International Ethnographic Film Festival in 2017, the prize. Yeah. And was it shown there, and how was the reception of the film there?
You're talking about Pará? It was the first...
PIEFF is the name of that I read,
in Taiwan, because
yeah,
there was
Taiwan.
Taiwan. No, it didn't have a prize there. It was a honorable mention in this ethnography festival in Pará. But in Taiwan, unfortunately, I couldn't. I mean, I wasn't invited personally to get there.
Yeah, well, I read in one of the articles that I was reading about that it was won one international ethnographic film festival.
Okay.
Won a prize, but he didn't say what kind of prize.
Maybe I'm not aware of it. I'm
maybe.
know that now.
Yeah, I'll check more and I'll let you know what.
Yeah, I'll check as well.
Yeah. And it's interesting because it has the how do you call the laurels?
Yeah, that was
in the statue. Yeah.
Okay.
In the middle. I'll send that to you.
Okay.
And then I thought it was very interesting because it said, "Wow."
Yeah.
I wanted to know what did the audience in Taiwan thought of it.
It was in I think it's organized by the university, right?
Ah, that could be.
Yeah, it is. It's part of a university program.
Okay.
So we got a new comment from Jesus, who says again how he loved the film. He absolutely loved the film, and he would like to buy it. How, if somebody is interested in buying a copy, how can they do it?
Well, there is a platform in. I have to send you as well the contact, the link, and there's the distributor here in Brazil, which has a copy. I mean, can send a copy. Nowadays, we don't talk about copies anymore.
Physical, yes.
Everything is going virtual.
Mm-hmm.
But I can send it to you. I don't know if it's possible to.
Yeah, just send it to me and I can pass it
contact.
to Jesus. I know
Okay.
him quite well.
Okay, thank you.
All right. So, as we say in Brazil, o papo tá bom. We have been talking for over 1 hour now.
Wow.
So I would like to ask our audience once again, if anybody has any other comments or questions to our director.
I think this, for me, it was an incredible movie, really, to see the reality. This and the other film that we had about the Amazonia, you know, Despertar da Florestânia, I'm sure that you have seen it. They really show a different reality of Brazil that people who live in the big cities are not, you know, don't get in tune with. And we need to, because that's our country too. And there has to be something that we can, and this is one of the reasons why we did choose it, the two films, because we needed to show it more. We needed to have people see it and bring awareness that there is this other reality there, and we cannot ignore it. You know, it is there. We cannot ignore it. And so hopefully, and I think some of the universities, because the festival, when it is presential, it's presented mostly on the, most of the universities here in the, and many of them are watching it too, the festival. And I really think that this is one way. That's why I asked about if it is shown in the schools there and everything, because we need to bring these things to the plate and start discussing and see if we make some movement so that the government start listening. You know, it's not just their way of wanting money out of you know, of the places where they go and mine and do whatever and cut the
This
trees.
government, Ariane, forget it.
Well,
the next government, maybe.
yeah, well, yeah, I agree. I agree with you that this government, we cannot expect much, but we need to start the movements now to get people to be aware of it. And hopefully something will come up a little, you know, a few years
people
from now.
Learn to vote.
And, you know, even though we live in the cities, I thought that a very profound thing that Cristiane yesterday, the director of Amazonia, it said yesterday, it said, you know, we live here in the city and we think, oh, it's, the forest is far away, that's not nothing. But we are the forest, we are part of that land, we are part of the, so we need to be involved and interested in something like that. And sometimes we have our children, they grow up without even knowing anything about in Brazil, unless it is brought to school and we can, that's why I think schools are still a very big vehicle where we have to start introducing this kind of thing.
Yeah, definitely.
Movies, and it's very, very, very important.
Sure. And nowadays, you know, it's quite clear that from, I don't know, a guy from Amazon, which is an NGO that use satellite images to see deforestation. It's clear that where there are tribes, you know, where there is an indigenous territory, there are preserved lands, so they know how we are starting to have to learn with them how to keep forests alive, you know, because I think, you know, there's this denial, and Trump now is gone, hopefully. I mean, it's a scientific fact that the climate is changing, and I think we have to start. It's for us as well. It's not for the indigenous people only. You know, we are all concerned.
Exactly, exactly. It is.
The pandemic as well is a kind of sign, a very diplomatic sign from nature that's, you know, I don't know. But indigenous people are really important in Brazil. They say that 13% of territory for 1% of population. But you know, hopefully, yes, there's so much land for these people. And there's so much land with private sectors, you know, transnational companies as well. Own so much lands in Brazil. It's not better.
And they do so much damage to the environment.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
All right. So how do we wind this down?
Well, I really would like to thank you, Fabian. It is such a pleasure to have you with us.
Thank
and
you very much.
to enlighten us a little bit more about, you know, this incredible project that you. What is your? I have a question. What is your next project? What are you working on now?
Well, you know, the chances of founding a film here in Brazil now are very, because the same is happening with culture, you know, it's the Ancine, the industry of cinema and audiovisual is being dismantled. It's shocking. I mean, it stopped everything. So hopefully I have a French producing company, which is helping me a lot. So I have a project which is kind of the idea of talking about the past, you know, and there's a guy in Mato Grosso which helped a small population to fight against, how to say, latifúndio.
Against large-scale farming.
Yeah, so it was during the dictatorship, you know, and I'm doing a parallel, a kind of mirror film with this situation, and someone, I can't say the name because he's in a delicate juridical situation. Legal situation, yes. And so, but it's a guy who is fighting for sem terras, people that don't have land in the Amazon, you know, and that's it. But God knows when it will be possible to.
Okay. Wonderful. Well, I wish you a really good luck with it. You know, you can achieve and accomplish that too. And Claudia, I want to thank you so much for moderating this session for us.
Pleasure.
Which is really great. And in the audience in particular, which I hope you really enjoyed. And before we close, I would like to mention to all of you in the audience, don't forget, we have our silent auction going on, which helps us bring these films and these directors to us. And on a virtual way this year, hopefully next year we can bring some of them presentially too. But I think maybe the virtual reaches a new and different audience too, which is very nice. And we next, and tomorrow we have another incredible movie. It's also documentary, Menino 23, Infâncias Perdidas no Brasil, the lost children of Brazil, which is incredible movie too. So I hope you come and watch us and talk to Belisario, who is the director of that. Don't forget also that we have a voting going on for the films of Mostra. That's another thing that is very important. Vote, because these films are just incredible, and we will have some awards for them. So again, thank you all so much for being here with us, and in particular, Fabian.
Thank you very much.
So much.
It was a
It was an
pleasure.
honor to have you.
Thank you.